Whoever had the talking stick would talk and give their perspective about anything that was on their mind. So there was no rule, there was no agenda, and it allowed people to kind of release their spirit to the public. So we don't have a talking stick, but we do have a talking marker. So we're going to pass this around, and whoever has the talking marker can talk. And you cannot be interrupted when you have this, like right now, talking. So that, again, we want to get to the bottom of this thing so that we can peel out the facade of this phenomenon. Okay, so I'm going to pass over the talking marker to someone on my left. And Myra, you are? Who born?
I am the person who represents Indigenous people.
Okay.
So you're the common citizen. You give a voices of a people. You have comments, and you have opinion of public.
I am part of this.
Yeah, sure.
So you're not a common, you're not an Indigenous person.
I am Indigenous because I'm saying that we're helping ourselves. But I'm writing like for all of the.
Yeah, good. So it's a role common citizen, Peter.
Common citizen.
Yeah.
Common citizen.
So not Indigenous.
Not Indigenous, I'm sure.
Okay.
I know.
No, you're Indigenous, but it's a different role. I mean,
Okay.
Here your role is like present a view of common citizen.
Okay, so I decided to have a look on comments in the internet because, Canadian people are all like nice to each other. Like they all the time say sorry, excuse me, and so on. But we never know what they think in their heart, in their minds, what is there. So I decided to go to the internet and see that there's a lot of comments on racism. So all the Canadians are nice, but when you come to the comments of news or some situations that concern Indigenous people, it's always racist comments. So one of them is that, for example, there's a lot of criminal among Aboriginals, and people say, why don't Aboriginal people help themselves? Like, why always we have to help them? Come on, do you think that Prime Minister would apologize for this residential schools only because like one day he woke up and he decided, oh, that was bad, let's just apologize? No, of course it was people who, from the First Nations and other Indian population who fought for that. How much time do I have? Do I have to talk like?
I will give everyone about 3 minutes.
To talk about all of them.
Right.
Okay. So, and also about women, we say like there are a lot of women being raped by their own people. So Indigenous men rape Indigenous women. They beat them and treat them very badly. So maybe Indigenous people should train their women how to survive in this society. Like, why does Canadian government has to help it? Because it's their people, so it's their problem. Just let them deal with it. So again, it is, for example, with if there's something happens, anyway, every Canadian will call the cops, right? And don't feel that they're lazy to deal with their own problems. And that is also interesting how people don't know about the things before they write such comments or before they think. And again, we are a material world. Why Indigenous people has to ask for money when it comes to this apologize and suffering? Like, why suffering should be paid with money? Again, you cannot buy healthcare system without money. You cannot buy education without money. You cannot improve the conditions in which people live without money. So we are sorry that we have to ask for money for these people to become better, to rise and be economically sufficient. And also that we think that Canada assumes no responsibility because what happened just happened. Just let's not think about the history and why should we think about it. Again, it means that anyway there is government government and but again government has to take the responsibility for the people that live in the society with all other communities. So I think that people have to know the information about the indigenous people more and about at least their own country before making such statements. So you should do better than hidden racism.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, what should I present on? I'm not sure.
Who are you?
So you're a school district, yeah?
Education authority.
Yeah, you're education authority. You're a school district authority.
Yeah.
So please speak from a point of school district authority. You have this enhancement agreement and you
This
have
is the
report.
enhancement agreement, and this is the report.
Report, yeah. They are from British Columbia education website for indigenous people.
Okay.
So take this place
But it
and just
looks
share
like
this.
not like a report. The purposes involved. The purposes
Yeah,
of the report.
These
or the purposes of
these
the
are
report?
two first pages of each report. It's a report. I want you to share with us the purposes of indigenous people learning education. How school sees this.
Okay. Well, I just want to remind you that the British Columbia schools were not, have not been successful in developing the quality education for the Aboriginal students. And the one that allows the students to succeed in the larger provincial economy while maintaining ties and culture. And growing recognition of this problem led to the signing of a Memorandum of Understanding in 1999. And so this is the sort of citation. We, the undersigned, acknowledge that Aboriginal learners are not experiencing school success in British Columbia. We state our intention to work together within the mandates of our respective organizations to improve school success for Aboriginal learners in British Columbia. And the memorandum was signed by the Chiefs Action Committee, the Provincial Minister of Education, the Federal Minister of Indian Northern Affairs, and the President of the BC Teachers Federation. So, and the Memorandum of Understanding led to a framework for the creation of enhancement agreement. And those, through these agreements, new relationships and commitments were made to improve the educational success of Aboriginal students. And so, later, so they sort of provided their relationship between their Aboriginal communities, the school district and educational authority in order to enhance the educational quality for Aboriginal students. So that, and after signing this agreement, their Aboriginal kids could go to the school, to the local district school, and to study with all kids, so they could be included in the education system. And in order to, and the aim of this agreement was also oriented at enhancing the sort of reviving the national culture, their language, and also like their sort of national identity, so that the Aboriginal students could be integrated with other students, and in order not to lose their roots. And here also I want to present the report on this enhancement agreement. The purposes of this report is to work within a respectful and trusting environment with the interest of students in mind, to commit to create a climate that is culturally sensitive, welcoming and supportive of Aboriginal students and adults at all school district work sites.
10 more seconds.
Sorry?
10 more seconds, please.
Okay. And to ensure Aboriginal students achieve academic success, be socially responsible, and learn Aboriginal ways of knowing and being. To honor and actively support the revitalization of the histories, cultures, governance, and languages of the Aboriginal people, So the main goal is to increase Aboriginal students' sense of belonging at schools and to enhance their national identity. And we do hope that these kinds of agreements will work further and generate successful results in reviving their national culture of Indians.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so
Can you give a stick to the next person?
Please.
Thank you. And I also want to speak about Remainers. I watched the video and you provide so much information. But what I want to say that that video was about the residential school survivor. And he was about 64 years old and he shared his story of trauma. What he said that I just want to support his idea that his parents were hunters and he was about 7 years old when he had to go to this residential school. And what is interesting that Department of Indian Affairs in Canada, they forced each family, Aboriginal family and their parents to go to these residential schools. And they had to attend the school. What is interesting is that this residential school survivor, he attended not just one school, but he attended many schools in Ontario that were residential one. And he was sharing his experience. I think he had very rich experience to share. And what he said that he was physically abused by his supervisor, and he was severely punished by his supervisors. And can you imagine when your teacher punishes you and treats you not like a student, but like a kind of experimental child? He shares his this tragic opinion and really touches the soul. So what he said that they just became alcoholic, and I was like watching this video and said, wow, why they were like becoming alcoholic? And he said that they started to become alcoholic in order to block these emotions and feelings, and they attempted to delete these memories. So that's why they tried to become alcoholic and drink these alcoholic drinks. So still, what is interesting is that he said that they still, even despite these policies that Canadian government implemented, they still wanted to find their identity. They still were in search of sense of belonging, and even it really reinforced maybe this kind of search for identity. So what he recommended was that he recommends to become allies, and Canadian people have to be have to ally and learn from history, and particularly not just from the history but the true history which really happened. And what I want to add here also, when I was looking through your presentation, and I found out that in 1996 people here you say that they signed residential schools were closed in 1996, and only in 2008, which we saw this video, this governmental official was apologizing, and about 12 years passed, and it's really interesting why, so many years passed, and only in 2008 he renewed his apology. That's it.
Thank you. Can you give a stick to another person?
Yes, so I'm speaking from as an Indigenous person who is in charge of amending the curriculum and schools.
Research on Aboriginal education,
Yes, I'm doing research. Yes. So basically, there is the idea that Indigenous people now, First Nation people, Inuit and Metis, they should. It's natural for them to acquire two ways of learning. So on the one hand, they want to know their cultural traditions, they want to revive them, they want to know what their values of the people are. And on the other hand, they also want to know the Western style of education, because it will give them more opportunities to compete, and it will also the combination of these two ways of learning will actually help for nurturing healthy, sustainable communities. So basically, at the moment of about 10 years ago, there was a concern about integrating these two ways of learning into the curriculum, into the research, educational research, and the problem was finding the tool and measurement for success of this, whether this reform works or not, whether these two ways of learning combined together work. So basically, that's it. An interesting thing that the pedagogy of First Nations and their principles of learning, they remind a lot of like liberal arts education, like it's student-centered. It employs the experience of experimental learning and oral texts. Emphasizes the awareness of self and also others, recognizes the value of group processes. So the principles of learning are very holistic, reflexive, and experiential. Learning involves, recognizes the role of this knowledge of Indigenous memory, history, and culture, story. So there's only positive things about the way people perceive the learning in the First Nations, and I think that it should not be limited only the second part of cultural awareness of the First Nations should not be limited only to these people, to the First Nations people. It can be implemented into the textbooks, like for the whole Canadian education. Why not? Like system. Have it. It is so that white people and all other people now we know Canada is a hugely a country of immigrants. A lot of people come from many different countries. So it will be a good example to show, probably this one tool that unites all these people, that they recognize the land where they come to, where they came to. They appreciate the values of the
10 more seconds.
people.
10 more seconds.
Yeah. So we think that it would be good, not limited to Indian population only, and raise the awareness.
Thank you.
You're a good timekeeper. I'm speaking from a position of someone who's an authority of education in this Canada. So taking this chance to talk about the Aboriginal issues, I would like to talk about the current program that was launched in Canada and that is called Learn Canada 2020. So as far as you remember, in September 2004, there was a great meeting of significant importance for Canada, for the Canadian people. And this meeting was held between First Ministers of Canada and the Aboriginal leaders. And they talked about this issue that's concerned with elimination of gap between Aboriginal people and major people living in Canada. So within this meeting, 4 main issues were discussed. First of all, this is to help these 2 categories of the Canadians to improve the relations between themselves, to improve Aboriginal people's housing conditions, education and health. And I would like to emphasize that education plays here the most vital role, because without education we cannot develop further, we cannot prosper as a nation, as a country. Also, I would like to emphasize that the program Learn Canada 2020 is based on this idea. When all people gathered during this meeting, they made a commitment to improve the relations between these 2 categories of Canada. The main idea, the main vision of this program is quality, lifelong learning opportunities for all Canadians. It is giving equal opportunities to the Aboriginal people and to Canadians in general. The main idea of this program is to bring up a new generation that is going to be well educated, that will have a good knowledge of what economy is and the economy of 21st century. Plus, this is a good understanding of what progressive and sustainable society must be. And also, this program is going to implement such ideas as personal growth opportunities for all Canadians. Within this program,
we're going to address two main issues that are connected to the Aboriginal people. First of all, this is Aboriginal education and official languages. When we are talking about Aboriginal education, we are talking about equal opportunities. It is from the very childhood, from early home education. Aboriginal people should have access, equal access to education materials, to educational institutions, and this should go on during the whole life. They should have opportunities to develop themselves during the whole period during the whole lifespan. And when we're talking about official languages, I would like to underline that these Aboriginal people, they have their own culture, they have their own language, and they have their own traditions. And this this knowledge of all this diversity must be implemented into curriculum. And all these languages must be taught, partially at least, at schools, at special linguistic centers. So that is why this is one of the greatest initiatives of Canadian government, of Canadian Education Ministry, to improve the quality of life of the Aboriginal people. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we heard about a survivor of the residential schools, and now I will talk about my experience of being a child of a survivor. So I'm Johnny, and I am part Ukrainian, and I am part Indigenous. I didn't know I was actually Indigenous at all until sometime in my teens. And only at that point, after many years of being told that we need to be afraid of Aboriginal people, I then found out that I'm also Aboriginal. And so what I've learned, and I learned this from some of my family, from my uncle in particular, that the culture, the practices that we have, those were things that were learned, like in the residential schools. So my uncle learned about the way of being violent, of having physical violence and verbal abuse, and I learned those things from him. And so those were the only things that he could pass on, and that's now what I have. And then I also learned that I wasn't worthy, and that those feelings then, I passed those on to my children, because that's what I knew. I didn't know anything else. I hadn't learned anything else. Now I see that I have been learning about that, and now I'm trying to find another way. But it's too late for some of my kids. I've already messed up the relationship with them. I have an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old who don't know me now. They know who I was before, when I was alcoholic, when I was drinking, when I was violent. But today, since they live with their mom, they don't get to see that I've changed. And instead, they just are reminded of this old way of being. I do at least have one child who lives with me, and he's gotten to see how I've developed and who I am today, and how I'm working to be somebody else. And so I hope that the whole country, the whole nation will be able to change, and we hear about these different reforms, but what I see is that the oppressors, those who oppressed us, who started these schools, they are still within the oppression themselves. They don't see that they are themselves oppressed. So I'm doing my part to try to change myself and help my children, but we will see what happens with everyone else.
Thank you.
Okay, I will talk on behalf of Duncan Campbell Scott. He was the deputy to superintendent in Indian Act, which was initiated to provide citizenship to Indians, to the First Nations. So I will talk about the goals of schools, goals of Indian residential schools. In 1954, when the school system was expanded in Canada, the subcommittee on the scheme concluded that residential schools should provide such kind of education leading to provide vocational education training to Eskimos that will feed them to work, feed them for occupations in the white man's economy. That was the goal. And now I want to talk about a little bit about traditions, the importance of denominational skills. It is obvious that the earliest things that they inherited, these First Nations, they should abandon their methodology, the central idea of which is a perfect spirit. They should abandon them. About education should be expanded to Indians in the thought that should be practical. It means that school leavers should be seeking for jobs, and they should earn for their bread with their hands, with their skills only. That was the aim of schools, to provide them such kind of knowledge. And the experience of the USA in 1950s, the experience of aggressive civilization, should be adopted. That the central of that education is that children should learn little. That little should be forgotten very soon, not to use it. And in 1885, when there was a Northwestern Rebellion, Indian Affairs School Inspector noted that no tribe would give trouble, serious trouble, because their children are at schools who are controlled by the white people and need to educate. Duncan Campbell noticed that these First Nations should be educated because they will create some kind of problems otherwise. Aboriginal people should be coerced to take Christian religion in order to abandon their own spiritual traditions, to undermine their spiritual leaders. Also, the people should start undermining their spiritual leaders and should follow the Christian idea. And concerning their family values, Kamloops Industrial School was established where girls were taught by ladies, white ladies, how to bring up their children, how to create their families, and those girls should change their family values, and the boys who are walking around on the roads, then they will change also in order to accept such values, and same family values will be changed. So, and the purpose of Indian education has become clearer because okay, about religious law, both Protestant and Catholic missionaries they were interested to save the lives of people, so they should work more in this direction in order to change the society, because they are interested to spread their religious ideas.
10 more seconds.
Okay, and about the children, that children should be educated and separated from their parents in order to change their culture. That's it.
Thank you. Now we had a chance to share our opinions, to share different perspectives, roles. And you see on a board we have all of the roles with the main points. So you can reference to them. You see what they were talking about. Peter.
So, it's about 3:30 right now. So, I'm not sure if we'll have a chance to have a discussion about reconciliation, but from what you have heard, what we have shared, during our break, perhaps you can take a look about the points the 7 points that we heard from policymakers, from survivors, and so forth, and see, goodness, I mean, is there a possibility, for reconciliation? From here, where can we go? And again, I think Alvin said something that was very powerful. This kind of curriculum could be utilized in other places. This kind of discussion, seeing the points of view from all different parties, can perhaps help us to move forward, not only in the Canadian arena, but in other countries as well. Okay. So again, thank you very much for your participation. You're very patient.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.